Success rarely comes from waiting for others to notice your effort. The truth is, the most powerful growth happens when you take control, act decisively, and celebrate every step forward, even when no one is watching. In this video, we'll break down 10 transformative strategies to get ahead when support is absent, building resilience, mastering self-reliance, setting unstoppable goals, embracing solitude, leveraging failure, developing independent habits, creating opportunities, strengthening your mindset, taking initiative, and celebrating small wins. Each chapter provides actionable insights to apply daily, helping you stay disciplined, focused, and unstoppable. Subscribe now to transform your life one step at a time. Number 1. Build resilience through daily challenges. Resilience is not a miracle that appears overnight. It's a skill shaped by small, deliberate acts performed every day. When people disappear from the sidelines and support systems fail, the difference between stagnation and forward motion comes down to how effectively inner strength is trained. Building resilience through daily challenges is less about heroic endurance and more about consistent rehearsal, exposing the mind and body to manageable stresses, practicing calm response, and collecting evidence that difficulty can be handled. The heart of this approach is simple. Design tiny, repeatable exercises that make discomfort familiar and decision-making crisp. Over time, those tiny exercises compound into a posture of steadiness that no absence of external help can shake. Start with a daily, 2-part ritual. Part 1 is a short physical challenge that wakes the nervous system and reminds the body it can tolerate stress. This could be a 30-second cold shower, a 5-minute interval of hard breathing and movement, or a single set of push-ups done with total focus. The aim is not to punish, but to create a reliable signal. Difficulty arrives, and the body meets it without drama. Part 2 is a brief cognitive task that trains perspective. Spend 5 minutes writing a single sentence about one obstacle you will face today and one exact action you will take if it occurs. This isn't about elaborate plans, it's about reducing the haze between problem and response. The physical challenge primes the body, the cognitive task aligns intent. Together they teach the nervous system and the mind to expect small disturbances and respond with habit rather than panic. Design daily challenges that follow clear rules. They must be slightly uncomfortable, have measurable completion, and be reversible. Slightly uncomfortable means enough friction that the challenge requires effort, but not so much that it induces despair. Measurable completion turns vague intentions into concrete wins. For example, write 200 words, call one old contact, or sit without phone for 25 minutes. Reversible keeps the mind willing to try again tomorrow. If failure happens, it's a data point, not a destiny. This triad, slight discomfort, clear finish line, and reversibility, creates a learning loop. Each successful completion increases confidence. Each failure surfaces a precise adjustment to try the next day. Adopt a micro-exposure mindset. Resilience is built the way a muscle grows. Repeated load with recovery. Identify a single fear or avoidance pattern and break it into tiny steps. If speaking up at work feels impossible, start by making one succinct comment in a meeting every day. If mornings feel chaotic and unproductive, commit to making your bed and drinking a glass of water within the first 5 minutes of waking. Each micro-exposure rewires the brain's association with the task from risky to routine. Track progress publicly or privately. The act of recording small wins turns them into evidence that you can rely on yourself. Practice emotional regulation using a simple breathing pause. When strong emotion appears, breathe deliberately for 6 slow counts in and 6 slow counts out. Label the emotion in one word: frustration, fear, tired. This labeling creates distance and reduces reactivity. After the pause, ask a focused question. What is useful right now? Or what action moves me forward by one small step? This sequence, breath, label, focused question, interrupts impulsive cycles and shifts attention toward practical response. Repeating it daily, even when calm, makes it automatic when pressure rises. Make failure an experiment, not a verdict. Every small challenge should include a pre-mortem and a post-mortem. Before attempting something, write down one clear way it could fail and what a controlled recovery would look like. After the attempt, note what actually happened and one specific tweak to try next time. This practice turns setbacks into a laboratory for improvement. The Stoic edge here is the acceptance that failure is neutral data. Courage lies in testing hypotheses and iterating quickly. Structure days with anchor tasks that are non-negotiable and require no external permission. These are the behaviors that prove self-reliance. Morning movement, a 20-minute focused work block, a meal prepared from basic ingredients, a brief reflection before bed. When external support vanishes, these anchors prevent drift. Keep the number small, 3 to 5 anchors, and protect them fiercely. Use visual reminders, a sticky note by the kettle, a short checklist on the phone, a small object on the desk that signals the commitment. The friction of a visible cue makes the choice easier when motivation is low. Equip the mind with a language that reframes hardship. Replace "I can't" with "I will try a way," and "this is unfair" with "this is an invitation." Words shape action. Practice saying aloud one short phrase each morning that prepares the mind for obstacles. Small trial, small growth, or do it for tomorrow's strength. Repetition makes the phrase an anchor in stress. The voice used should be firm, not indulgent. Imagine a coach who speaks plainly and kindly. That voice becomes the internal guide when outside cheerleaders are absent. Train the sensory memory of endurance. Use vivid, sensory-rich practice to make resilience felt. For instance, during a cold shower, notice the initial shock on the skin, the way breath shortens, the slow widening of the chest as control returns. Later, when faced with emotional shock, recall the physical memory. Breath lengthens, muscles relax, the mind steadies. Creating sensory flashpoints links physical experience to emotional control. Similarly, use taste and texture to ground yourself. A deliberate sip of strong black coffee or the tactile act of wringing a cloth can reset attention. Small sensory anchors are portable tools that work when chaos appears. Develop a one thing now habit to overcome paralysis. When options multiply and indecision grows, pick one small irreversible action and do it immediately. Send the email, open the document, walk 3 minutes toward the task. Action dissolves anxiety. Train this reflex with daily practice. When hesitation occurs in the day, set a timer for 3 minutes and commit to any forward motion. That repeated motion builds a bias toward initiation, which becomes invaluable when external support is absent. Create social resilience through selective boundaries rather than withdrawal. Independence does not require complete solitude. It requires clear limits. Practice saying a concise no to one request each week that drains energy without return. Practice asking for what is needed in one relationship, clarity, time, or space, and accept the response without bargaining. These exercises strengthen interpersonal muscles while preserving autonomy. When no one is there to cheer, the ability to protect time and energy becomes an act of self-compassion and strategy. Keep a resilience log. Every evening record 3 things: 1 challenge faced, the action taken, and what changed because of that action. Over time, the log becomes a ledger of capability, a counter-argument to any narrative that isolation equals impossibility. The act of writing consolidates learning and reveals patterns, which times of day are weak, which triggers are predictable, which actions are most effective. Review the log weekly and choose one pattern to nudge: more sleep, different timing, or altered exposure levels. Physical health is non-negotiable. Resilience without basic energy is fragile. Prioritize sleep, protein-rich meals, sunlight exposure, and movement. These are not distant goals, they are immediate tools. Even when overwhelmed, a brisk 10-minute walk outside refreshes perspective and resets the nervous system. Think of good sleep and nutrition as infrastructural investments in the capacity to handle stress, not indulgent rewards. Finally, make meaning from hardship. A stoic mind does not glamorize struggle, but recognizes its role in shaping character. When challenges arrive, ask, how does this moment train patience, sharpen focus, or reveal priorities? Naming the quality being trained converts pain into purpose. That transformation is not automatic. It requires a daily practice of reflection. The resilience log is where this alchemy happens. Resilience built through daily challenges is not a parade of victories. It is a quiet accumulation of evidence that the body endures, the mind adapts, and the will steadies. The practice is simple and relentless. Design tiny stressors, meet them with a prepared response, record what changes, and repeat. Over weeks, the nervous system learns a new baseline. Difficulty is expected and manageable. The world's absence becomes less a threat and more a chance to rely on a cultivated inner resource. That resource allows forward movement, not because the path is easy, but because the traveler has practiced walking over rough ground. Number 2, master self-reliance for consistent progress. Self-reliance is not merely the absence of dependence on others. It is the deliberate cultivation of personal agency, discipline, and confidence in your own judgment. Consistent progress emerges not from sporadic effort or luck, but from a daily commitment to taking ownership of your actions and outcomes, even when no one applauds, guides, or acknowledges you. Mastering self-reliance begins with the recognition that the only person guaranteed to be present for your growth is yourself. This understanding transforms ordinary routines into powerful rituals, trivial setbacks into lessons, and fleeting motivation into sustained momentum. The work of self-reliance is invisible to the world, yet its effects become unmistakable over time. Start by auditing the areas in your life where reliance on others has created fragility. This could be financial habits, professional responsibilities, emotional stability, or skill development. Identify the precise moments when dependency has slowed or limited progress. For instance, if career advancement has stalled because you wait for guidance or approval, mark that as a leverage point. If emotional stability wavers because of fluctuating social support, recognize that the root is internal resilience, not external validation. Making these patterns visible allows the mind to move from unconscious complaint to deliberate strategy. Awareness alone does not build mastery, but it creates the foundation for deliberate action. Next, define a framework for consistent daily practice. Self-reliance is a muscle strengthened through repetition, measured action, and reflection. Start small but be relentless. Choose one area each day where you will act independently without waiting for instruction or affirmation. Perhaps it's completing a work task before being asked, preparing a nourishing meal from scratch, or making a decisive choice about how to spend time that aligns with long-term goals. The key is that the action is intentional, autonomous, and measurable. Even when the result is imperfect, the act of taking ownership reinforces the belief that you can navigate challenges without external scaffolding. Cultivate decision-making precision through micro-decisions. Life's momentum depends on the ability to decide quickly and confidently. Begin by creating a list of recurring, low-stakes choices, from what to eat for breakfast to which task to tackle first, and commit to choosing deliberately within a set time frame. Each resolved choice trains the mind to trust its judgment, reduces hesitation, and gradually builds a habit of proactive action. Extend this principle to higher stakes decisions. Research the options, weigh consequences, decide, and execute. Avoid the temptation to seek unnecessary validation or reassurance. The judgment you cultivate becomes your most reliable compass. Build a feedback loop centered on personal accountability. After completing a task or facing a challenge, pause to assess performance critically yet objectively. Ask, what went well, what could be improved, and what did I learn about my own capabilities? Record these observations in a notebook or digital journal. This habit develops clarity about strengths and weaknesses, transforming experiences into concrete knowledge. Over time, the accumulation of self-generated insight replaces dependence on external praise or critique, because the individual becomes their own most rigorous mentor. Personal accountability is both compass and mirror. It guides action and reflects reality without distortion. Incorporate deliberate problem-solving as a daily discipline. When an obstacle arises, resist the immediate urge to defer to others or seek external fixes. Break the problem into its smallest components and explore potential solutions independently. Even imperfect attempts contribute to mastery, because they train the mind to analyze, adapt, and respond proactively. Use simple questions to guide this practice. What resources do I control? What incremental steps move the situation forward? What lessons does this obstacle offer? Practicing autonomous problem-solving transforms the experience of challenge from one of frustration to one of empowerment, reinforcing self-reliance in tangible, repeatable ways. Time management becomes an act of self-reliance when approached intentionally. Structure each day with clear priorities aligned with long-term goals, rather than reacting to external demands or distractions. Identify the tasks that deliver the highest return on effort and commit to completing them consistently. Guard this time fiercely. Interruptions should be managed, not passively accepted. Using time as a resource that you control cultivates confidence in your ability to direct life circumstances. The practice of disciplined scheduling trains the mind to operate independently, producing tangible results regardless of external assistance or recognition. Strengthen emotional autonomy by observing feelings without surrendering to them. Self-reliance requires mastery over internal responses as much as external actions. When anger, fear, or disappointment arises, acknowledge the emotion without assigning blame externally. Ask, what can I control in this moment? What action moves me forward despite discomfort? Over time, this approach creates a steady inner climate, resilient to fluctuations in support or opinion. Emotional self-reliance allows you to act decisively even when others are absent or unsupportive, turning volatility into clarity and hesitation into forward motion. Invest in skill development with relentless consistency. The ability to progress independently is magnified by competence. Identify the core skills that directly influence your goals, whether technical, creative, or interpersonal, and commit to daily practice. Allocate focused time to deliberate learning. Read, write, experiment, and refine. Measure improvement through tangible outputs rather than subjective feelings. When skills grow, reliance on others diminishes naturally because proficiency becomes a self-sustaining engine. Even small daily improvements compound into remarkable mastery over months and years, demonstrating that consistent effort outperforms sporadic assistance from others. Adopt a mindset that reframes obstacles as opportunities to test self-reliance. Challenges are inevitable, and their arrival is neutral. The meaning assigned is the choice. When faced with setbacks, ask, How can I use this circumstance to strengthen independence, sharpen judgment, or reinforce consistency? The framing transforms perceived adversity into actionable growth. Each hurdle conquered alone provides evidence that progress is possible without external scaffolding. This perspective not only motivates action, but also develops a psychological fortitude that shields against discouragement when support systems falter. Create ritualized self-checks to reinforce autonomy. Each morning review personal priorities and commitments, ensuring that action aligns with long-term objectives. Each evening reflect on decisions made, progress achieved, and lessons learned. These structured reflections anchor growth in conscious awareness rather than fleeting motivation. The daily ritual signals to the mind that progress is a personal responsibility, not contingent on recognition or guidance. Over time, the ritual becomes automatic, embedding self-reliance into the fabric of everyday life, so that independence is not an occasional effort, but a default state of operation. Sustain consistency by focusing on systems rather than singular goals. Goals are endpoints. Systems are the machinery that produces results repeatedly. Design routines, habits, and processes that guarantee forward movement, regardless of motivation or external input. Daily writing, exercise, planning, or skill practice are examples of systems that accumulate over time. By prioritizing process over outcome, self-reliance thrives because progress is not reliant on circumstances or encouragement. The system becomes your ally, producing compounding growth even when recognition or support is absent. Finally, celebrate competence and progress internally. Recognize that each small victory achieved independently is evidence of your growing mastery. The practice of self-congratulation is not vanity. It is reinforcement that your efforts are effective. Internal acknowledgement solidifies the psychological foundation for sustained self-reliance. It signals to the mind and body that action produces results, which fuels further engagement and confidence. This internal validation is more enduring and reliable than any external reward, establishing a resilient framework for consistent progress. Mastering self-reliance for consistent progress is an exercise in conscious ownership. It requires deliberate effort, rigorous reflection, disciplined action, and unwavering trust in one's own judgment. By auditing dependencies, creating daily frameworks for autonomous action, practicing decision-making, problem-solving, emotional regulation, skill development, and system-based routines, you cultivate an inner engine of progress that operates independently of external support. Over time, these deliberate practices accumulate into a steadfast capacity to advance, adapt, and grow in any circumstance. Self-reliance is both a shield against external unpredictability and a compass purposeful, relentless forward motion. Number 3. Set goals others can't hinder. Goals are only as reliable as the foundation on which they are built. If your objectives are dependent on other people's approval, availability, or behavior, progress is hostage to circumstances beyond your control. To move forward consistently, it is essential to design goals that are impervious to the fluctuations of external influence. Such goals rely on personal effort, resourcefulness, and daily action rather than on luck, timing, or the cooperation of others. The difference between stagnant ambition and unstoppable forward momentum lies in constructing aims that cannot be obstructed by absence, disagreement, or neglect. This approach transforms uncertainty into opportunity and isolation into clarity of purpose. Begin by distinguishing between dependent and independent goals. Dependent goals require someone else to act, approve, or participate for success. An example might be, get a promotion by convincing my boss, or build a business with a partner who may or may not commit. Independent goals, by contrast, are entirely within your influence. Master a skill needed for promotion, complete a solo project that increases value, or create a habit that strengthens professional resilience. Shifting focus toward independent goals does not remove ambition or vision. It aligns effort with certainty, making progress inevitable when consistent action is applied. Once independent goals are chosen, define them with precision. Clarity eliminates ambiguity, ensuring you know exactly what counts as completion. Avoid vague intentions like improve communication skills or get healthier. Specify measurable outcomes. Deliver one persuasive presentation per week, or increase daily steps to 10,000 for 30 consecutive days. When a goal has tangible metrics, progress is self-evident, and interference from others becomes irrelevant. Ambiguity invites delay and excuses. Precision generates momentum and accountability that cannot be stolen by circumstances. Break larger goals into discrete, daily actions. Independent goals are not only about what to achieve, but also about structuring effort, so that each day contributes directly to completion. If the ultimate aim is to write a book without relying on a publisher or mentor, the actionable steps could include writing 500 words daily, editing one chapter per week, and researching independently. Each step is under personal control, and completion is verifiable. When gears are divided into these bite-sized tasks, external factors lose influence, because the path forward is dictated solely by personal consistency. Protect your goals with a non-negotiable mindset. External factors may still present friction. People may question, criticize, or ignore your plans, but the commitment must remain unshakable. Treat daily steps as contracts with yourself. When someone doubts your efforts or refuses to help, their action or inaction does not alter your trajectory. By internalizing responsibility, you create immunity to discouragement. Progress becomes habitual and impervious to external disruption, and the focus shifts entirely to effort, skill, and discipline rather than dependency. Build redundancies into your process. Independent goals thrive when contingency is embedded in their design. For instance, if a skill acquisition depends on materials or tools, ensure alternative methods exist for practice. If networking goals rely on connecting with influential people, create parallel objectives such as learning strategies or publishing content that builds visibility without requiring cooperation. By designing multiple paths to the same endpoint, external absence or obstruction becomes irrelevant, and progress remains continuous. Redundancy is not waste. It is resilience made operational. Anchor goals to intrinsic motivation rather than validation. Goals dependent on recognition or reward are vulnerable to outside influence because external acknowledgement is inconsistent. Instead, connect each goal to a personal value, long-term vision, or self-measured outcome. If the purpose of writing is personal mastery, skill development, or creating a body of work that enhances capability, the activity itself generates reinforcement. Intrinsic motivation ensures persistence when applause is absent and eliminates the need for constant validation, rendering the objective immune to the vagaries of others' approval or presence. Use regular reflection to adjust without abandoning. Independent goals are not rigid. They adapt intelligently, reflect weekly on progress, obstacles, and methods, identify what works, what slows advancement, and how effort can be optimized without relying on external input. This practice transforms potential frustration into actionable intelligence. It allows recalibration while maintaining autonomy, ensuring that goals continue progressing regardless of shifting circumstances, relationships, or opportunities. Reflection reinforces control by making the individual the architect of outcomes rather than a passenger of chance. Leverage visible, personal accountability. Record actions, milestones, and results in a journal or digital tracker. Visibility creates psychological reinforcement, converting abstract ambition into concrete evidence of progress. When goals are independently tracked, external factors cannot diminish achievement. Review entries frequently, acknowledge cumulative impact, learn from missteps, and celebrate consistent execution. This habit fortifies the connection between effort and outcome, emphasizing that achievement is a function of personal responsibility rather than dependence on others. Anticipate obstacles with proactive planning. Independent goals are not immune to difficulty, but preparation ensures these challenges cannot derail momentum. List potential barriers, logistical, environmental, or personal, and develop responses that rely entirely on your own initiative. For instance, if time scarcity threatens consistency, plan fixed time blocks for critical tasks. If skill gaps exist, create structured learning sessions. By mapping foreseeable obstacles and preparing autonomous responses, goals become self-sustaining. External interference loses influence because each obstacle has a pre-planned, executable solution within your control. Incorporate consistency rituals to maintain alignment. Daily repetition transforms effort into habit, making progress automatic. Simple yet deliberate routines, writing, practice, exercise, or strategic planning anchor goals in behavior rather than motivation or circumstance. Habits serve as mechanical safeguards, ensuring forward motion even during fatigue, distraction, or external obstruction. The accumulation of repeated deliberate actions compounds into measurable results, demonstrating that steady, autonomous effort always outpaces reliance on chance or support. Embrace challenges as catalysts rather than deterrent. Independent goals often face resistance or scarcity of resources, and these moments are instructive. Treat every challenge as an experiment in ingenuity. How can progress be sustained with limited external help? What creative approach resolves the obstacle entirely through personal action? Each encounter strengthens problem-solving ability, sharpens judgment, and reinforces the capacity to act autonomously. Over time, challenges cease to intimidate. They become evidence of resilience, proving that the path forward exists in spite of absence or opposition. Anchor progress in feedback loops of self-reward and self-correction. Recognize incremental wins and course-correct promptly when results fall short. This dual approach, acknowledging success while refining strategy, reinforces the cycle of independent achievement. Celebrate completing a daily action step or achieving a weekly milestone, and simultaneously examine inefficiencies or miscalculations for improvement. The cycle fosters continual refinement and sustains motivation without dependence on external acknowledgement or encouragement. Finally, cultivate a long-term vision that relies entirely on your own energy, decisions, and effort. Independent goals are scalable because they remain under personal authority from start to finish. When a vision is clear and tied to self-directed daily actions, progress is inevitable, cumulative, and resilient. No absence of guidance, recognition, or support can halt development. By designing goals that only require what you can control, your effort, your learning, your consistency, you establish a trajectory that is unstoppable, sustainable, and self-perpetuating, allowing success to emerge steadily, regardless of circumstance. Setting goals others cannot hinder is an exercise in autonomy, strategy, and foresight. It demands careful separation of influence from ambition, precision in definition, daily structured action, proactive obstacle planning, and rigorous self-accountability. It requires intrinsic motivation and continuous reflection. Each step taken independently compounds into undeniable evidence that personal effort drives results. Over time, reliance on external conditions diminishes, confidence rises, and momentum becomes self-sustaining. Goals built this way are impervious to absence, disagreement, or neglect. They move forward solely because the individual behind them refuses to pause, proving that consistent progress is always possible when control rests entirely in your hands. Number 4. Embrace solitude to sharpen focus. Solitude is often mistaken for loneliness, but the two are profoundly different. Loneliness is a state of disconnection imposed by circumstance, whereas solitude is a deliberate choice that creates space for clarity, focus, and growth. In a world saturated with distraction and constant noise, the ability to be alone with your thoughts is a rare skill that directly enhances productivity, insight, and personal mastery. When you embrace solitude, you are not withdrawing from life. You are deliberately crafting a mental environment where ideas can crystallize, priorities become sharper, and distractions lose their power. Focus is not a commodity, it is cultivated, and solitude is the tool that polishes it. The first step is creating intentional periods of isolation, free from external input. These are not retreats for relaxation alone. They are dedicated windows for deep concentration. Start with manageable blocks of time, perhaps 30 minutes to an hour, and gradually increase the duration as comfort grows. During these periods, all notifications, social media, and interruptions should be removed. The purpose is not escape, but immersion in tasks that matter most. When external noise is silenced, the mind gains clarity and decisions can be made with precision instead of impulse. Repeated practice develops mental endurance and the ability to concentrate even amidst inevitable interruptions in daily life. Use solitude as a tool to examine the mind itself. Being alone provides an opportunity to observe thoughts and patterns without distraction. Sit quietly, write in a journal, or engage in contemplative reflection. Ask yourself which goals are truly significant, what habits advance your life, and which behaviors serve only to fill time. Observing without judgment sharpens insight and allows you to identify inefficiencies in thought and action. This practice strengthens self-awareness, which is the foundation of intentional focus. Over time, the mind begins to filter out trivial distractions naturally, prioritizing the actions that yield meaningful results. Structure solitude with purpose. Random isolation is less effective than directed engagement. Decide in advance what you will accomplish during each period of focus. It could be writing, strategizing, learning a skill, or problem solving. Establish measurable outcomes so that the time spent alone produces concrete results. Purpose-driven solitude trains the mind to associate being alone with productivity and progress, rather than emptiness or boredom. This creates a positive feedback loop, where concentration grows, ideas emerge faster, and complex problems can be approached with calm precision. The environment of solitude matters as well. Choose spaces that minimize external stimuli and reinforce focus. A quiet room, a library, or a natural setting can all serve as conducive environments. Remove clutter and create order. The mind mirrors its surroundings. Sensory anchors, such as a single candle, a focused playlist of instrumental music, or deliberate seating arrangements, can heighten concentration. The goal is to establish a consistent environment where the mind automatically shifts into a state of alert attention and deep engagement, associating solitude with clarity and purpose. Embrace discomfort as a necessary component. Solitude can initially provoke restlessness, anxiety, or the urge to seek distraction. These sensations are signals that the mind is unaccustomed to concentrated self-reliance. Lean into the discomfort rather than avoiding it. Allow boredom and wandering thoughts to surface without reacting impulsively. Over time, the mind adjusts, and focus becomes easier to sustain. The ability to sit with oneself, unshaken by internal agitation, is a direct pathway to mental strength and precision. What once felt intolerable becomes a tool for sharpening endurance and self-control. Pair solitude with incremental skill building. Being alone is not an end in itself, it is a framework for achieving mastery. Use isolated periods to practice skills, solve problems, or generate ideas without external influence. The uninterrupted environment allows experimentation and learning through trial and error without fear of judgment. Whether studying a language, developing a craft, or crafting strategies, solitude amplifies the depth and efficiency of learning. Skills honed in focused isolation translate into higher performance in collaborative or public settings because the internal foundation is strong and self-reinforcing. Adopt a rhythm of deliberate reflection. Each session of solitude should conclude with a brief assessment. What was accomplished, what obstacles emerged, and what insights arose. Writing these reflections consolidates learning and transforms transient experiences into actionable intelligence. This step also prevents aimless isolation, ensuring that solitude reinforces growth rather than merely consuming time. Over weeks and months, the reflective habit creates a repository of knowledge, lessons, and clarity that steadily accumulates, further enhancing focus and decision-making. Leverage solitude to confront fears and internal resistance. Distractions and social pressures often mask discomforts or insecurities. Alone, these elements are more visible. Facing them directly, whether it's fear of failure, procrastination, or indecision, creates the opportunity to address and overcome them. By repeatedly confronting internal obstacles in a controlled environment, mental resilience is strengthened. Focus is no longer easily fractured by worry or doubt, because the mind has practiced maintaining attention and composure even when challenges arise internally. Solitude becomes a crucible for both clarity and courage. Use sensory and physical anchors to enhance concentration. While alone, incorporate deliberate breathing, posture, or tactile cues to reinforce focus. A slow, deep breath, a straightened spine, or a weighted pen can serve as triggers that signal the mind to enter a state of concentrated work. These anchors create a conditioned response over time, so that when focus is required elsewhere, the brain can recall the physiological and sensory state associated with productive solitude. The result is a transfer of heightened attention into real-world settings, where distraction is inevitable but manageable. Balance solitude with strategic integration into life. Solitude is most effective when it supplements action rather than replaces it. Time spent alone should enhance capacity to engage, contribute, and execute in the outside world. Insights gained, skills practiced, and focus sharpened during isolation are meant to be applied, tested, and refined through action. The interplay between solitude and activity strengthens both dimensions. The reflective period informs performance, and the resulting experiences provide new material for contemplation and refinement. This cyclical process magnifies growth exponentially. Develop autonomy in attention management. Solitude trains the brain to prioritize thought, suppress irrelevant stimuli, and sustain energy toward high-value tasks. In practice, this means choosing the task, time, and method intentionally rather than reacting to external demands or fleeting impulses. By controlling attention independently, you build the capacity to work deeply and consistently, regardless of environmental distractions or social expectations. This skill becomes especially valuable in high-pressure or unsupervised contexts, where sustained concentration is rare and increasingly impactful. Reinforce focus through incremental challenge. Start with manageable periods of attention and gradually increase duration and complexity, solve progressively harder problems, tackle lengthier tasks, or engage with intricate material during solitude. This scaffolding strengthens mental stamina, allowing you to operate at peak efficiency for longer stretches. Each incremental advance solidifies the connection between deliberate isolation and heightened cognitive capability, creating a self-sustaining growth cycle that compounds over time. Finally, treat solitude as a daily discipline rather than an occasional luxury. Consistent practice embeds concentration as a default state rather than a rare event. The cumulative effect of repeated, purposeful periods of isolation transforms the mind, distractions diminish, clarity deepens, and decisions become precise. What begins as an intentional act evolves into an enduring capacity to navigate complex tasks, maintain mental calm, and direct energy toward meaningful outcomes. Solitude, embraced fully, is not absence, but the presence of unshakable focus, a personal environment of power that cannot be diluted by external chaos or dependence. Embracing solitude to sharpen focus is the cultivation of inner space, clarity, and discipline. It requires intentional practice, structured reflection, incremental challenge, and the courage to sit with oneself without distraction. Through these practices, attention becomes a skill, not a fleeting resource. The mind learns to operate with precision, the body supports sustained effort, and the self becomes independent of external noise or interference. In mastering solitude, the individual gains both a sanctuary for thought and a laboratory for action, creating a foundation where deep focus, insight, and consistent progress are inevitable. Number 5. Leverage failure as secret advantage. Failure is often viewed as an endpoint, a judgment on ability, or a reflection of inadequacy, but this perspective is a trap. In reality, failure is an underutilized tool, a hidden catalyst for growth, and a strategic advantage for those willing to engage with it deliberately. Every misstep contains lessons, data, and opportunity. What separates stagnation from progress is not whether failure occurs, but how it is interpreted and applied. By reframing failure as a resource rather than a setback, you convert obstacles into accelerators, transforming experiences that would discourage most people into stepping stones that build skill, resilience, and insight. The first step in leveraging failure is altering perception. Instead of seeing mistakes as proof of incompetence, treat each one as feedback. Examine the situation objectively. What choices led to the result? What variables were within control, and which were external? Separating influence from circumstance allows the mind to extract actionable intelligence rather than collapse under blame. A clear-eyed analysis prevents emotional overwhelm and converts disappointment into practical knowledge. Over time, this approach trains the mind to anticipate and embrace failure as a source of information rather than a source of fear. Documenting failures transforms them into a structured learning process. Keep a dedicated record of missteps, noting the context, actions taken, outcomes, and what could be adjusted for the future. This process externalizes lessons and prevents repetition of avoidable mistakes. It also allows cumulative insight. Patterns emerge that reveal weaknesses in approach, gaps in knowledge, or recurring blind spots. When analyzed carefully, each recorded failure becomes a blueprint for improvement. Over months and years, this archive becomes an invaluable personal library of strategic intelligence, giving foresight that most people lack because they avoid acknowledging mistakes. Leverage failure by cultivating rapid experimentation. Approach projects and challenges as experiments with measurable outcomes. Accept that some attempts will not succeed, and treat each one as a hypothesis test. For example, if a business strategy underperforms, analyze which elements failed and design a new iteration based on data. The speed of iteration matters more than perfection in any single attempt. By framing failure as an expected component of experimentation, setbacks lose power to discourage, and momentum continues unabated. Repeated cycles of trial, error, and adjustment create a feedback loop where failure accelerates progress rather than halts it. Normalize discomfort and uncertainty. Fear of failure often stems from the emotional weight of being wrong or judged. Exposure to controlled failure reduces this fear over time. Take on challenges where success is uncertain, small at first, then progressively larger. The goal is not to court risk recklessly, but to desensitize the mind to failure's emotional impact. Each encounter with adversity reinforces confidence in one's capacity to respond effectively. Mental resilience strengthens, and the ability to navigate high-pressure situations grows because the individual has trained themselves to maintain clarity and action when outcomes are unpredictable. Adopt a mindset that treats failure as a mirror, reflecting areas for skill development and strategic refinement. When something does not work, do not ask why me. Ask, what can I control? This shift converts external blame into internal agency. Focus on refining skills, processes, or thinking patterns rather than lamenting circumstances. Over time, this orientation fosters self-reliance and equips the mind to extract maximum value from every negative outcome. Failure becomes an ongoing instructor, providing lessons that cannot be accessed through success alone. Integrate deliberate reflection sessions into routines. After experiencing setbacks, spend time deconstructing events with questions like, what assumptions were incorrect? Which actions could be modified? What new strategies can be implemented next time? Writing or speaking these reflections solidifies insight and ensures mistakes are internalized as knowledge rather than fleeting memory. Reflection transforms ephemeral missteps into durable guidance, allowing the individual to approach subsequent challenges with greater clarity, preparation, and precision. Reframe failure in relation to long-term goals. Each misstep is a data point along a trajectory of improvement rather than a judgment of ultimate capability. When progress is measured cumulatively, temporary setbacks are less threatening because the broader context reveals advancement despite individual disappointments. This perspective encourages persistence, patience, and sustained effort. Recognizing that failure is a temporary deviation rather than a permanent verdict fosters confidence in continuous action, reinforcing the habit of persistence even when results are delayed or imperfect. Use failure to cultivate humility without surrender. Missteps reveal limitations and blind spots, creating opportunities to address them. Accepting that no one succeeds without encountering challenges encourages openness to learning and adaptation. Humility does not weaken authority or confidence. It strengthens judgment by preventing arrogance from blinding perception. By responding to mistakes with measured reflection and targeted adjustment, the individual enhances competence while maintaining composure and self-assurance, creating a strategic edge over those who fear or ignore failure. Transform failure into storytelling advantage. Sharing setbacks candidly, with emphasis on lessons learned and adjustments made, can inspire others and reinforce credibility. While the immediate outcome may appear negative, the long-term narrative positions you as resourceful, persistent, and insightful. People respect those who navigate adversity with intelligence and poise because it signals capacity for consistent problem-solving. The act of framing failure publicly or privately strengthens the psychological association between missteps and growth, further embedding the mindset that setbacks are instrumental rather than detrimental. Leverage failure physically as well as mentally. When facing a misstep, incorporate tangible actions that reinforce progress and control. For example, re-engage with tasks immediately, practice skills that were deficient, or experiment with alternative approaches. Physical repetition bridges understanding and competence, converting theoretical lessons into practical capability. Each action demonstrates to the body and mind that error is not terminal, but part of a cycle of refinement. Over time, this creates a muscle memory of resilience, where response to failure becomes instinctive and effective. Pair failure with targeted problem-solving exercises. Identify weaknesses revealed by missteps and design specific drills or tasks to address them. If time management was the issue, schedule increasingly precise blocks for tasks. If communication failed, practice concise articulation or active listening. By converting lessons into actionable exercises, the mind and body internalize solutions, ensuring that the next encounter with a similar challenge produces better results. Failure thus becomes the blueprint for structured improvement rather than random disappointment. Normalize small-scale risk-taking to precondition the mind for larger challenges. Engage regularly in situations where failure is possible but consequence is manageable. Attempt new skills, tackle unfamiliar problems, or experiment with unconventional strategies. Controlled exposure trains decision-making, risk assessment, and emotional regulation, allowing mistakes to be experienced without catastrophic impact. These exercises foster confidence and adaptability, creating a mental habit of embracing challenges proactively rather than avoiding them out of fear. Finally, integrate failure into a long-term strategic mindset. Success is not a linear accumulation of victories, but a trajectory shaped by trials, errors, and iterative learning. Each setback, when analyzed, applied, and internalized, increases competence, sharpens judgment, and builds resilience. By consistently reframing mistakes as advantages, the individual transforms what others perceive as obstacles into lever points that accelerate growth. Over time, the compounding effect of learning from failures becomes a decisive advantage, producing steady improvement and eventual mastery that cannot be matched by those who pursue only smooth, unchallenged paths. Leveraging failure as a secret advantage is the art of transforming missteps into strategic insight, emotional resilience, and skill enhancement. It requires deliberate reflection, documentation, experimentation, incremental exposure to risk, and continuous problem solving. By systematically extracting value from setbacks, the mind trains itself to operate with clarity, adaptability, and unwavering persistence. Failure ceases to be an endpoint or a judgment, becoming instead a powerful tool for growth. Mastery is not the absence of error, but the ability to harness every misstep to accelerate forward, producing momentum, insight, and strength that remains unshakable in the face of adversity. Number 6. Develop habits independent of support. Habits are the architecture of daily life, yet too often they are built on fragile foundations: approval, motivation, or external reinforcement. True strength lies in creating habits that function independently of support, habits that persist regardless of circumstance, social influence, or external validation. These habits form the backbone of progress, ensuring that even in isolation, growth continues, momentum accumulates, and resilience deepens. Developing habits independent of support begins with the understanding that consistency is a personal responsibility, and that the mind can be trained to act reliably, even when the world provides no encouragement or reward. The first step is to identify behaviors that have the greatest impact on long-term goals. Focus on a small number of keystone habits, actions that generate ripple effects across multiple areas of life. Whether it's writing, exercising, planning, or practicing a skill, these habits should directly influence competence, productivity, or well-being. By concentrating on high-leverage behaviors, effort is maximized and the absence of external support is less disruptive. This approach prioritizes what truly matters, ensuring that energy spent is always productive and self-sustaining. Start small, but start deliberately. Habits fail when their scope exceeds one's current capacity or when they depend on fluctuating circumstances. Choose manageable, precise actions that can be repeated daily without negotiation. For example, instead of committing vaguely to exercise more, specify perform 20 push-ups each morning. Instead of promising to write regularly, commit to write 200 words before breakfast. Clear parameters reduce friction, minimize excuses, and create an environment in which habits can survive without encouragement. Small victories accumulate, and repetition reinforces neural pathways that make action automatic. Anchor habits to environmental cues. The surroundings should trigger the desired action naturally, removing the need for external motivation. Place a notebook on the nightstand to prompt writing. Lay workout clothes where they can't be ignored, or set up a timer that signals the start of a practice session. These cues operate silently and consistently, guiding behavior independently of accountability partners or social pressure. Habits embedded in the environment are less vulnerable to lapses caused by absence of support, mood fluctuations, or external distractions. The environment becomes a quiet ally in sustaining momentum. Prioritize structure over inspiration. Motivation is unreliable. Habits that depend on feeling inspired are doomed to inconsistency. Focus instead on scheduling specific times, defining precise durations, and creating repeatable sequences that operate mechanically. The brain learns through repetition, and structure transforms choice into routine. When a habit is rigidly scheduled and paired with clear action steps, external encouragement becomes irrelevant. The habit executes itself because it is no longer dependent on fluctuating energy, opinion, or circumstance. It is anchored in personal discipline. Track progress objectively. Independent habits require self-monitoring to maintain momentum and reinforce accountability. Use journals, apps, or simple charts to record completion. Monitoring provides visible evidence of consistency, which sustains effort when external feedback is absent. Tracking also identifies patterns that hinder habit formation, allowing for adjustments without reliance on guidance. The accumulation of tracked success creates internal validation. Each mark, check, or log entry reinforces the mind's belief in capability, making the habit self-reinforcing over time. Introduce deliberate friction to prevent reliance on others. For habits that might otherwise be propped up by external validation or encouragement, design practices that require personal initiative to succeed. For example, commit to completing a task before receiving acknowledgement or delay external reinforcement until milestones are achieved independently. This cultivates the ability to act consistently without prompting, teaching the mind that the habit's value resides in the action itself, rather than approval or praise. Over time, reliance on external reinforcement diminishes, and the habit becomes self-sustaining. Pair habits with deliberate reflection. Each day, review whether actions were completed as intended, and analyze deviations without judgment. This reflective practice builds awareness of internal drivers, environmental triggers, and potential obstacles. By systematically examining performance, the mind internalizes responsibility and adjusts strategies autonomously. Reflection reinforces the connection between action and outcome, demonstrating that habits can thrive through deliberate observation and adjustment rather than external guidance. The habit grows stronger, more precise, and increasingly independent. Anchor habits to identity rather than outcome. When behaviors are tied to who you are rather than what you achieve, they become more resilient. For example, instead of framing exercise as a way to lose weight, Identify as someone who prioritizes health through daily movement. Instead of viewing writing as a means to publication, adopt the identity of a person who rates consistently as a natural part of life. When identity drives action, the habit persists regardless of external rewards, recognition, or support. The behavior becomes intrinsic, and failure or absence of feedback no longer threatens consistency. Create habits that are immediately actionable and do not require coordination. Dependencies, collaboration, or waiting on resources introduce vulnerability. Independent habits should be executable alone, using available means with minimal preparation. For example, instead of relying on gym availability, design home-based workouts. Instead of waiting for group discussions, engage in personal study or reflection. Self-contained habits eliminate bottlenecks, empowering progress to continue unhindered by circumstance or cooperation from others. Autonomy becomes a built-in feature of the habit itself. Leverage incremental difficulty to solidify independence. Once a habit is established, gradually increase complexity, duration, or intensity without external support. This could mean adding repetitions, extending practice sessions, or tackling more complex challenges. Incremental difficulty strengthens capability, reinforces confidence, and prepares the individual to handle greater responsibility autonomously. Habits become more robust as they adapt to higher demands, proving that progress can continue regardless of external reinforcement or assistance. Integrate sensory and ritualistic elements to reinforce habit continuity. Physical cues, timing rituals, or repeated sequences create mental associations that prompt behavior automatically. For example, starting each writing session with a brief posture adjustment or setting a consistent location for practice can make execution automatic. Ritualized behavior reduces reliance on motivation or supervision because the body and mind recognize the sequence and respond without deliberation. Habits anchored in sensory cues achieve sustainability and resist lapses caused by distraction or absence of support. Introduce contingency planning to preserve habit continuity. Recognize that obstacles, travel, illness, or unexpected tasks will occur. Develop alternative methods to maintain consistency. If a daily run is interrupted by weather, substitute indoor exercises. If a study session is disrupted, adjust to a shorter session or a different location. Planning for disruption ensures the habit is resilient, capable of surviving external interference without derailing overall progress. Reliability is built through adaptability, not rigidity. Finally, celebrate the habit itself rather than external recognition. Internal acknowledgement strengthens the psychological foundation, reinforcing that the act is inherently valuable. The habit becomes self-rewarding, and consistency is maintained independently of outside validation. Over time, the mind develops a bias toward action because the habit has proven its worth internally. Personal reinforcement ensures continuity, making the behavior a durable component of daily life that persists regardless of circumstance. Developing habits, independent of support, is an exercise in discipline, design, and self-reliance. It requires clarity in selection, precision in execution, environmental reinforcement, identity alignment, deliberate reflection, incremental challenge, and contingency planning. These practices cultivate behaviors that persist without supervision, praise, or external enforcement. Over months and years, such habits accumulate, creating a foundation of automatic competence and steady progress. By ensuring that growth depends on personal commitment rather than fluctuating support, life becomes more predictable, manageable, and self-directed, allowing forward momentum to continue even when external reinforcement is absent. Number 7. Create opportunities where none exist. Opportunities rarely fall into laps by accident. Most people wait for circumstances to align, for guidance to appear, or for doors to open, and as a result, potential remains dormant. Creating opportunities where none exist requires a proactive mindset, relentless initiative, and the willingness to act when no one else will. It is the art of turning scarcity into possibility, absence into advantage, and obstacles into stepping stones. The power lies in recognizing that waiting is optional, action is sovereign, and innovation is always within reach. Every forward movement begins with the decision to act independently, regardless of the surrounding environment or support. The first principle in creating opportunities is a clear assessment of resources. Resources are not limited to money, connections, or formal authority. They include time, knowledge, skills, energy, and creativity. Inventory what you have and consider how these elements can be combined or repurposed to generate a pathway forward. Often individuals overestimate the need for external assistance and underestimate the power of leveraging what they already control. When a thorough resource analysis is conducted, gaps become apparent not as limitations, but as challenges that can be solved creatively. Next, adopt a mindset that reframes scarcity as a problem to solve, rather than a barrier. When traditional routes appear blocked, such as career advancement without mentorship, business growth without investors, or skill application without institutional support, view these limitations as invitations to innovate. Ask, what can I build myself? What unconventional approach allows me to bypass dependency? This approach transforms frustration into initiative, empowering action that does not rely on permission or external timing. Scarcity becomes fuel for creativity and self-reliance, rather than a source of resignation. Proactive networking is an essential tool. Opportunities often appear in environments where action intersects with visibility. Even when support is absent, visibility can be cultivated intentionally. Share work, communicate value, and seek alignment with those whose goals intersect with yours. Strategic visibility does not require prior introduction or established privilege. It can be developed through consistent output, thoughtful engagement, and presence in spaces relevant to your objectives. By actively inserting yourself into contexts where opportunity could emerge, you transform passive observation into deliberate positioning. Leverage skill development as a mechanism to create opportunity. When gaps in the market or need appear, competence becomes a differentiator. Identify skills in high demand, cultivate mastery, and then position yourself as a resource capable of producing results independently. The greater your capacity to deliver outcomes without reliance on external facilitation, the more likely opportunities emerge organically. Skill becomes a bridge from stagnation to action, allowing you to shape possibilities rather than wait for them to appear. Break large, intimidating challenges into smaller, actionable steps. Often, opportunities seem inaccessible because the scale of effort appears overwhelming. By segmenting complex goals into manageable actions, momentum is built, visibility is enhanced, and pathways emerge. Each small completed action generates credibility, confidence, and leverage for the next step. The accumulation of these micro-actions often produces opportunities that initially seemed impossible simply because consistent effort transforms an abstract objective into tangible progress. Experimentation is a crucial mindset. Not every attempt will succeed, and some initiatives may fail entirely. However, each experiment provides information that narrows options, uncovers unforeseen potential, and highlights new approaches. Approach actions as tests, documenting what works and what does not. Then iterate quickly. Rapid cycles of experimentation, reflection, and adaptation increase the probability of opportunity creation exponentially because learning compounds and each iteration moves closer to effective solutions. Develop strategic initiative by anticipating gaps before others recognize them. Observe trends, patterns, and unmet needs in your environment, and consider how your skills, knowledge, and resources could fill them. Acting preemptively positions you at the forefront rather than the back of opportunity queues. When the market, organization, or social context has an unmet need, those who act decisively, even without endorsement, gain advantage. Anticipation combined with action transforms foresight into tangible opportunities that others may overlook or delay in pursuing. Build resilience to rejection and resistance. Creating opportunities often involves acting where there is no initial approval, which invites skepticism or opposition. Treat resistance as a form of feedback, not an endpoint. Analyze objections, identify constructive insights, and adjust the approach accordingly. Persistent and informed effort converts initial resistance into eventual acceptance, while maintaining autonomy ensures that progress continues regardless of external validation. Resilience in the face of pushback is a prerequisite for opportunity creation, because most impactful results occur before support is granted. Resourcefulness and creativity are indispensable. Opportunities rarely present themselves fully formed. They must be assembled from available elements. Identify unconventional methods to achieve objectives, repurpose existing tools, or combine partial resources to create leverage. Think of barriers as components to manipulate rather than immovable blocks. Resourcefulness allows action in imperfect conditions, and creative problem-solving ensures that lack of conventional support does not prevent meaningful progress. The capacity to improvise often distinguishes those who create opportunity from those who wait for it. Establish habits that reinforce initiative. Consistent, proactive behavior compounds over time, producing a steady stream of emergent opportunities. Daily practices, such as skill improvement, strategic outreach, and experimentation, generate a pipeline of possibilities. These habits need not be dramatic or large in scale. Repetition and reliability are more influential than sporadic bursts of effort. Over time, habit-driven initiative becomes automatic, embedding the capacity to generate opportunity as a natural, continuous function rather than an occasional act of effort. Cultivate strategic patience while acting decisively. Creating opportunity requires balancing immediate action with long-term vision. Some initiatives yield results slowly, and early efforts may go unnoticed. Maintain focus on cumulative progress, iterating along the path while keeping broader goals in view. Patience ensures persistence, while decisiveness ensures that each small action contributes directly to potential leverage. This combination ensures that opportunities are cultivated proactively rather than left to chance. Leverage feedback loops to refine approach. Seek insights from experience, results, and observation of others' responses. Evaluate which actions produce progress, which generate visibility, and which uncover previously unseen avenues. Use these insights to adjust strategy, reallocate resources, and optimize effort. The cycle of action, feedback, and adjustment is fundamental to opportunity creation because it converts trial into knowledge and knowledge into refined execution. Over time, these iterative cycles generate increasingly robust and self-sustaining pathways. Finally, anchor opportunity creation to personal agency. Recognize that waiting for external facilitation or permission is optional. Every action, skill acquisition, connection, or experiment is a choice within your control. By consistently exercising agency, gaps transform into platforms. Scarcity becomes a playground for creativity. Absence of support ceases to be a limitation. Opportunities emerge, not by chance but because action and foresight align to produce tangible possibilities. The individual becomes the architect of circumstances rather than a passive recipient. Creating opportunities where none exist is the deliberate practice of agency, initiative, and resourcefulness. It requires assessing resources, reframing scarcity, developing skills, experimenting strategically, anticipating needs, tolerating resistance, and iteratively refining actions. Over time, consistent application of these principles produces a self-sustaining flow of possibilities, demonstrating that opportunity is not discovered, it is constructed. Those who master this approach move forward regardless of support, circumstance, or external validation, proving that proactive action, creative problem-solving, and disciplined persistence transform absence into tangible pathways for growth, success, and achievement. Number 8. Strengthen mindset against external doubt. External doubt is a subtle yet pervasive force. It can erode confidence, distort perception, and derail even the most determined individual if left unchecked. People will question your choices, challenge your vision, or dismiss your efforts, often without malice, but with enough certainty to shake resolve. Strengthening the mindset against this doubt is not about ignoring feedback or becoming impervious to reality. It is about cultivating internal clarity, resilience, and self-assurance, so that criticism and skepticism no longer dictate your trajectory. The process begins with understanding the nature of doubt and learning to navigate it with purpose rather than reaction. The first step is to recognize the source of external doubt. Often, skepticism stems from fear, jealousy, limited perspective, or conventional thinking. It is rarely an objective measure of your ability or potential. By identifying the origin, you can depersonalize criticism, reducing its emotional impact. When doubt is understood as a reflection of the observer, rather than a verdict on your capability, it loses its power to disrupt focus. This awareness transforms potential frustration into insight, allowing action to proceed unimpeded. Internalize accountability as the cornerstone of resilience. When decisions, actions, and outcomes are measured against your own standards rather than external opinion, doubt becomes secondary. Accountability creates a personal compass that guides choices, benchmarks success, and evaluates effort independently. By consistently aligning actions with internal criteria, external skepticism cannot dictate behavior. The mind develops a habitual orientation toward responsibility, reinforcing confidence in decision-making even when validation or encouragement is absent. Anchor belief in competence rather than approval. Confidence rooted in skill, preparation, and experience is far more stable than confidence derived from praise or acceptance. Cultivate mastery in areas critical to your goals, and let measurable performance affirm capability. Skills act as evidence that your actions are grounded, purposeful, and capable of producing results. As competence grows, doubt from others becomes less intimidating because it is contradicted by demonstrable ability. Mastery provides a shield that external opinion cannot penetrate. Reframe doubt as information rather than judgment. Every expression of skepticism or criticism contains insight, whether into perception, expectation, or potential misalignment. Extract what is useful and discard what is irrelevant. For example, if someone questions a strategy, analyze whether the critique highlights a genuine risk or merely a difference in perspective. Incorporating useful elements improves judgment and strategy, while discarding irrelevant doubt prevents distraction. This selective approach strengthens focus, enabling proactive refinement without surrendering autonomy to outside opinion. Develop mental routines that reinforce clarity. Daily practices such as reflection, journaling, meditation, or visualization create a steady internal anchor. When doubt arises externally, these routines provide a reservoir of calm, perspective, and certainty to draw from. Repetition of self-guided mental exercises strengthens cognitive resilience, conditioning the mind to maintain focus despite interruptions, challenges, or negative commentary. Over time, these routines create a baseline of stability, allowing external opinions to be evaluated objectively rather than reacted to emotionally. Surrounding oneself with selective influence is crucial. Not all voices carry equal weight. Discern which individuals provide constructive, informed, and honest perspectives, and prioritize these inputs over casual or uninformed criticism. Minimizing exposure to unnecessary doubt reduces mental noise and preserves energy for action. While isolation from all opinions is neither possible nor productive, curating the sources of influence ensures that external input serves growth rather than eroding confidence. This approach creates a protective framework while maintaining openness to valuable feedback. Cultivate a long-term perspective that prioritizes consistency over immediate validation. External doubt often focuses on short-term setbacks, missteps, or perceived risks. By keeping attention on cumulative progress and long-range objectives, temporary skepticism loses relevance. Decisions made with vision and discipline override transient opposition. A mindset anchored in long-term perspective allows persistence, reinforces commitment to strategy, and reduces susceptibility to fluctuation caused by external perception. Time itself becomes a validating force as results accumulate. Strengthen emotional resilience through deliberate exposure. Experience challenges, setbacks, and criticism in controlled ways to build tolerance and adaptability. The process is akin to training a muscle. Repeated exposure conditions the mind to remain steady in the presence of doubt. For instance, intentionally presenting ideas to critical audiences or tackling projects under observation allows practice in maintaining composure, confidence, and rationality. Emotional resilience ensures that doubt provokes analysis rather than panic, response rather than retreat, action rather than hesitation. Anchor decisions in preparation and evidence. When actions are guided by careful research, analysis, and experience, external doubt cannot easily undermine confidence. Evidence-based decision-making provides a rational counterweight to subjective skepticism. By maintaining a record of rationale, strategy, and outcomes, it becomes possible to assess feedback objectively. Preparedness transforms uncertainty into certainty, allowing decisive action even when others question capability, timing, or judgment. Adopt narrative control over internal dialogue. External doubt often infiltrates through internalization of others' skepticism. Monitor thoughts. Identify negative self-talk influenced by external opinion and replace it with affirmations grounded in capability and intent. Conscious shaping of internal narrative maintains clarity and focus. When the mind is trained to interpret doubt as transient input rather than absolute truth, energy is preserved for productive effort and motivation remains anchored in purpose rather than validation. Practice reframing failure and criticism as tools for strengthening resolve. Every challenge, setback, or expression of doubt can be viewed as an opportunity to test endurance, refine strategy, and consolidate skill. By interpreting criticism as a stimulus for action rather than a judgment, the mind becomes increasingly resilient to outside influence. This perspective transforms adversity into fuel, creating a reinforcing cycle where skepticism encountered externally directly enhances capability, resolve, and insight. Strengthen physical and environmental support for mental clarity. Adequate rest, nutrition, exercise, and focused workspaces create a physiological foundation that supports resilience against doubt. The mind's capacity to resist distraction, maintain composure, and evaluate criticism objectively is enhanced by the stability of body and environment. Optimal conditions reduce the likelihood that external skepticism will trigger disproportionate emotional or cognitive responses, allowing rational assessment and deliberate action to dominate. Implement feedback loops of self-evaluation and correction. Periodically review decisions, performance, and outcomes without relying on external validation. Identify successes, shortcomings, and areas for improvement. By cultivating internal feedback mechanisms, progress can be measured and refined independently, reducing reliance on approval or judgment from others. The habit of self-assessment reinforces autonomy, strengthens confidence, and provides an objective measure against which external doubt is filtered. Finally, cultivate purpose as the ultimate anchor. When action is rooted in clear personal mission and aligned with values, external doubt becomes peripheral rather than central. Purpose provides direction, sustains effort, and validates choices internally. Challenges and criticism are contextualized within a broader vision, reducing susceptibility to distraction or discouragement. A purpose-driven mindset transforms external skepticism into background noise, allowing consistent, focused advancement, regardless of opinion or opposition. Strengthening the mindset against external doubt is the deliberate cultivation of clarity, autonomy, resilience, and focus. It requires understanding the sources of skepticism, building internal accountability, anchoring belief in competence, leveraging useful feedback, maintaining long-term perspective, practicing emotional resilience, structuring the environment, and embedding purpose into action. Over time, these practices forge a mental framework that is steady, decisive, and resistant to disruption. External doubt may continue to exist, but it loses the capacity to derail progress, influence perception, or weaken resolve. The individual learns to move forward confidently, guided by internal standards, preparation, and vision, rather than the fluctuating judgments of others. Number 9. Take initiative before anyone acts. Success favors those who act first. Waiting for permission, validation, or for others to take the lead often results in missed opportunities, delayed progress, and diminished influence. Taking initiative before anyone acts is not about recklessness or impatience. It is about recognizing potential, understanding the moment, and stepping forward decisively when others hesitate. Those who cultivate the habit of preemptive action consistently position themselves ahead of circumstances, create momentum where none exists, and establish themselves as leaders in both perception and reality. Initiative transforms potential into results because action, not intention, drives progress. The first step is to develop acute awareness of the environment. Observing patterns, identifying gaps, and anticipating needs enables action before external triggers appear. Opportunities rarely announce themselves explicitly. They are often subtle, embedded in behavior, trends, or emerging circumstances. Cultivating a habit of careful observation ensures that you perceive openings where others see uncertainty or routine. Awareness allows you to act when the window is small, giving advantage to those who recognize potential before it becomes obvious to everyone else. Cultivate decisiveness. Initiative requires moving forward without waiting for certainty or consensus. Analysis paralysis and over-reliance on external confirmation delay action and cede control to others. Decisiveness is built through practice. Make small, deliberate choices daily that emphasize speed and clarity. Evaluate outcomes afterward, learn and adjust. Over time, decisiveness becomes a reflex, allowing you to respond to emerging opportunities immediately rather than hesitating for approval or consensus. The habit of rapid, informed action creates an environment in which initiative becomes a natural characteristic rather than a forced effort. Anticipate outcomes rather than react to them. When initiative is taken preemptively, it is rooted in foresight. Predict potential scenarios and develop contingency plans so that action is not blind but guided by strategy. Predictive thinking transforms uncertainty into a manageable field of possibilities. By envisioning consequences, the mind is prepared to navigate challenges while advancing objectives. Initiative is most effective when informed by understanding, and foresight amplifies both efficiency and impact. Act independently of validation. Often, people hesitate because they await approval, consensus, or support. Taking initiative requires disregarding this dependency. Execute tasks because they align with objectives, not because someone else will recognize them. Autonomy in action ensures momentum is maintained regardless of social or organizational dynamics. The ability to move decisively without external reinforcement establishes credibility and authority, demonstrating that action originates from competence rather than compliance. Use preemptive action to establish influence. When you act before others, you shape the environment and set the standard. Early initiative creates perception of capability, foresight, and leadership. Others often follow the lead of the first mover, giving those who act preemptively control over direction, expectations, and priorities. Influence is compounded when initiative is paired with effectiveness, because results validate leadership naturally. Acting first is not just about speed. It is about creating a position from which further impact flows. Develop routines that encourage readiness. Initiative thrives in prepared minds. Maintain habits that enhance responsiveness, such as continuous learning, skill refinement, and strategic planning. When knowledge, capability, and awareness are cultivated consistently, action can be taken immediately rather than after delay for preparation. Routine readiness transforms hesitation into opportunity and ensures that action precedes reaction, reinforcing the habit of preemptive engagement. Anticipate resistance and plan for execution under pressure. Early action often encounters skepticism, surprise, or opposition because others are unprepared or unwilling to move. Prepare mentally and operationally to sustain initiative in the face of doubt. Maintain composure, clarity, and focus while executing tasks so that resistance does not derail momentum. Strength under pressure ensures that acting first translates into meaningful progress rather than symbolic effort. Initiative becomes an enduring capability rather than a fleeting gesture. Pair initiative with incremental action. Large undertakings often feel paralyzing if approached as a single step. Break complex objectives into smaller, manageable tasks that can be initiated immediately. Even partial completion generates momentum, demonstrates capacity, and reduces the perception of risk. Early steps, no matter how small, can catalyze subsequent progress and encourage alignment from others who observe and fail. Incremental action compounds over time, magnifying the impact of first movement. Leverage curiosity and problem-solving to fuel preemptive action. Those who actively seek challenges, unanswered questions, or unmet needs position themselves to act where others wait. Curiosity drives initiative by identifying what must be done before the need is explicitly recognized. Problem-solving becomes proactive rather than reactive, transforming gaps into opportunities for influence, learning, and achievement. By focusing on creating solutions rather than waiting for instruction, action becomes both purposeful and strategic. Commit to ownership of outcomes. Initiative requires accepting responsibility for both success and failure. Hesitation often stems from fear of accountability, but those who act early embrace the consequences of choice. Ownership reinforces competence and builds credibility. By taking responsibility for results, the mind is trained to act decisively, adjust strategies autonomously, and extract lessons from every attempt. Accountability converts action into learning, and preemptive action into long-term mastery. Develop confidence through repetition. The habit of acting first grows stronger with repeated practice. Begin with small initiatives, such as leading discussions, proposing ideas, or addressing overlooked problems. Each success reinforces self-assurance, while each setback provides experience in handling risk. Confidence is cumulative. The more frequently you act before others, the more natural and automatic decisive behavior becomes. Initiative is strengthened because hesitation becomes less habitual, replaced by a default orientation toward engagement. Maintain focus on objectives rather than comparison. Acting before others can evoke scrutiny, envy, or criticism. Do not allow external noise to slow momentum. Keep attention on intended outcomes, evaluating performance through results rather than perception. This orientation preserves energy for productive action and ensures that initiative is measured by effectiveness, not by recognition or alignment with peers. Focused action precedes validation, making results the ultimate indicator of success. Finally, recognize the compound effect of early action. Each instance of initiative sets off a chain reaction. It creates opportunities, builds reputation, reinforces competence, and accelerates progress. Over time, the accumulation of proactive behavior establishes a pattern where those who habitually act first consistently achieve higher results, influence outcomes, and gain a strategic edge over others who wait. Initiative is not a single event. It is a discipline, a mindset, and a practice that compounds into lasting advantage. Taking initiative before anyone acts is the embodiment of proactive discipline. It requires awareness, decisiveness, foresight, autonomy, readiness, incremental execution, problem-solving, ownership, repetition, and focus. When cultivated consistently, preemptive action positions individuals ahead of circumstance, ahead of peers, and ahead of opportunity itself. Results are produced because action is prioritized over delay, capability is demonstrated through execution, and influence emerges from early engagement. Those who master this practice move continuously forward, generating momentum that cannot be replicated by hesitation or reactive behavior, transforming initiative into a defining feature of personal and professional success. Number 10. Celebrate small wins alone confidently. Celebrating small wins is often underestimated, yet it is one of the most powerful tools for sustaining motivation, building confidence, and reinforcing consistent progress. When achievements go unnoticed by others, it is easy to feel that effort is invisible, meaningless, or unrecognized. However, true resilience and growth come from learning to value your own progress, acknowledging incremental steps, and taking pride in accomplishments regardless of external attention. Celebrating small wins alone is not self-indulgence. It is the recognition that personal effort and persistence are worthy of validation, even in solitude. The first step in celebrating achievements independently is to redefine success in measurable, personal terms. Large goals are often daunting, and the lack of immediate recognition can lead to discouragement. Breaking objectives into smaller, tangible milestones creates moments of accomplishment that are easier to observe and honor. For instance, completing a chapter of a project, learning a new skill, or overcoming a personal limitation are all wins that deserve acknowledgement. By identifying what counts as a meaningful step, you make progress visible and tangible, creating a psychological framework that reinforces momentum. Develop a ritual for recognition. Taking time intentionally to mark achievement creates a tangible sense of accomplishment. This might be as simple as journaling the completion, reflecting silently on the impact, or giving oneself a small reward that reinforces the behavior. Rituals formalize the acknowledgement, signaling to the mind that effort and progress are worthy of attention. Over time, these rituals build a habit of internal celebration that functions independently of social validation. The brain begins to associate effort with reward intrinsically, ensuring consistent motivation even when external praise is absent. Anchor celebration in personal meaning rather than external comparison. It is easy to discount accomplishments if others do not recognize them or if benchmarks are measured against peers. Instead, focus on the context of personal growth. Each completed task, every challenge overcome, and every incremental improvement represents movement toward mastery. By tying recognition to personal standards and internal benchmarks, the mind learns to derive satisfaction from progress itself, rather than waiting for applause or acknowledgement from external sources. This internalization strengthens confidence and cultivates self-reliance. Incorporate sensory reinforcement to enhance the experience. Physical cues, such as standing tall, smiling, or allowing oneself a deep breath of relief, signal the body to register the achievement emotionally. These small actions create physiological markers that reinforce the mental significance of the win. Celebrating with sensory engagement makes recognition more vivid and memorable, embedding the habit of acknowledgement more deeply than mere thought alone. Over time, this strengthens the ability to feel satisfaction and motivation independently of outside approval. Document progress visually. Recording wins through a journal, checklist, or visual tracker provides evidence of consistency and growth. Seeing achievements accumulate creates a powerful feedback loop that reinforces effort. It transforms abstract work into a visible trajectory, providing both motivation and perspective. When external recognition is lacking, this record serves as proof that effort is producing results, sustaining drive and maintaining focus on long-term goals. Practice gratitude as part of celebrating accomplishments. Recognize the effort invested, the challenges overcome, and the personal discipline required to reach milestones. Gratitude shifts attention from scarcity to abundance, highlighting what has been achieved rather than what remains undone. This practice enhances emotional resilience, reduces feelings of isolation in solitary effort, and reinforces a positive relationship with one's own capacity. Recognizing personal effort cultivates an internal reward system that sustains action and fortifies self-esteem. Pair small wins with reflection. Each achievement, no matter how minor, provides an opportunity to evaluate what strategies worked, what behaviors contributed, and what lessons can be applied moving forward. Reflection transforms recognition into actionable insight, ensuring that celebration is not passive but contributes to ongoing growth. By connecting acknowledgement with learning, even minor accomplishments become stepping stones for further development, creating a compounded effect over time. Build consistency in celebration. Make the acknowledgement of small victories habitual rather than sporadic. Consistency reinforces the psychological association between effort and reward, creating momentum that propels future action. Regularly marking progress, even privately, trains the mind to recognize achievement automatically, fostering sustained motivation without reliance on external reinforcement. This habit strengthens perseverance, resilience, and the ability to maintain focus on long-term goals. Avoid external dependency for validation. External praise can be inconsistent, delayed, or entirely absent. Celebrating alone cultivates self-sufficiency and motivation. By internalizing recognition, you become immune to fluctuating social dynamics and maintain momentum even when the environment is indifferent. The ability to honor effort independently ensures that progress continues steadily and that confidence does not fluctuate based on outside acknowledgement. Leverage celebration as a psychological anchor. Each recognition of effort reinforces identity, someone who acts, persists, and achieves. Small wins remind you that capability exists, competence is demonstrated, and forward movement is constant. This reinforcement solidifies self-concept, making challenges less intimidating and promoting a mindset where effort is inherently valuable. Anchoring identity to consistent action rather than external validation strengthens resilience, focus, and in all areas of life. Pair acknowledgement with visualization of cumulative impact. Even minor achievements contribute to larger objectives. By mentally connecting small wins to overarching goals, each step gains significance and momentum builds. Visualization reinforces purpose, clarifies progress, and enhances the sense of accomplishment. Recognizing the broader impact of small actions nurtures motivation and reinforces the belief that each effort contributes meaningfully to long-term success. Incorporate creativity into celebration. Celebrating achievements alone does not have to be mundane or perfunctory. Use music, movement, art, or other sensory experiences to make acknowledgement meaningful and memorable. Creative celebration strengthens the emotional imprint of accomplishment, making it more motivating and sustaining. This personal investment reinforces engagement with goals and ensures that effort is consistently rewarded in a satisfying way. Recognize that small wins compound over time. Each moment of acknowledgement strengthens the habit of perseverance, builds confidence, and reinforces internal motivation. While external recognition may be absent, the cumulative effect of celebrating progress independently creates momentum, shapes identity, and produces measurable advancement. The compounding nature of small, self-recognized victories accelerates growth and builds a psychological foundation that prepares for larger challenges and accomplishments. Finally, embrace solitude in celebration as a strength rather than a limitation. Learning to honor effort without reliance on others cultivates autonomy, emotional resilience, and self-directed motivation. This practice ensures that progress continues under any circumstance, regardless of support, attention, or acknowledgement. Celebrating alone fosters independence, fortifies confidence, and establishes a personal reward system that reinforces persistence, discipline, and long-term achievement. Celebrating small wins alone confidently is a practice of self-recognition, reflection, and internal validation. It involves defining meaningful milestones, ritualizing acknowledgement, engaging the senses, tracking progress, expressing gratitude, reflecting strategically, reinforcing identity, and visualizing cumulative impact. By cultivating this habit, motivation becomes self-sustaining, momentum accumulates naturally, and resilience is fortified. The individual learns that progress is valuable on its own, that achievement is meaningful independent of external recognition, and that consistent acknowledgement of effort transforms incremental steps into enduring personal growth and success.